back to another episode of the Way Forward podcast with your host, Alec, Zeck. This episode, we had JP Sears, and so, I'm laughing, obviously, and that's what I was doing like the entire episode. But he really did talk about a lot of really deep, profound stuff. Like, my goodness, that dude is so deep and just so perceptive of reality, and is just an all-around amazing human being that is not scared to say how he feels with regards to everything going on, but balancing that from a position of love for humanity, right? So not much more to say. Excuse my coughing a few times in the video. I went on a long run this morning and I have that sort of like cold cough lung thing going on. It's definitely not COVID. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the episode with JP Sears. JP, thank you for joining me on my podcast. How are you doing?
Alec, thank you for having me. I'm doing pretty good. I would say most of me is doing great. As you know, I've got a little knee issue. So my biggest complaint would be a torn patella tendon. I'm getting surgically repaired tomorrow morning, which I'm so excited about.
That's
Traveling
good.
around for a week with a torn patella tendon I'm over it. But anyway,
I've been there, dude. I've had knee surgery, so I've been there.
What parts of your knee have you torn up?
So on my right knee, I tore my meniscus when I was playing basketball in high school, and then I had surgery on that. And then on my left knee, I tore my MCL, but it healed on its own. So
cool.
I've been there. Okay, that was actually my first question, though. So what happened to your knee?
Bro.
As much detail as you want to give.
All right. So the first thing that happened is I turned 40 a month ago. Just the sense of humor life has. Like, all right, JP, you're 40. Cool. Here it comes. And then, so a week and a half ago, I was wakeboarding with friends. We all got together, rented a boat here on a lake in Austin. Back 20 years ago, I was big into wakeboarding. A friend and I, when we were 20 years old, bought the cheapest boat we could, the most, best boat we could afford, which was crap. We loved wakeboarding, and I'd screw myself up all the time, dislocated my shoulder a few times. And then, anyway, so the first time wakeboarding in years, I'm up for almost 30 seconds. And I do this little, just out in the flats, backside 180 spin move, dug the front end of the board into the water.
So you weren't even like jumping the wake or anything.
No.
You're just.
I hadn't even gotten one wake jump in. This is literally within 30 seconds. And I did this backside 180, and, I didn't land it right. I'm rusty, but the front end of the board dug into the water. The way they make the wakeboard bindings nowadays, you don't come out of them. So the board just dug in, and just boom.
Oh man, dude. That's probably not cool. I remember like I haven't wakeboarded in 5 years, and all the wakeboards I've ever used all had bindings that you could easily slip your foot in and just slip right out if you like caught an edge.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, with the bindings that you can come out of when you hit an edge. The problem with them is occasionally, like if you're doing inverts and like, kind of big amplitude tricks, occasionally people's feet would come out of them while they're coming off the wake and flipping, and then you can blow a knee out with only one foot stuck in. So, the thing with the boards is you want it to stay on your feet when you want it on your feet, and you want it to come off when you want it to come off. And, there's not too much in between.
Oh man, dude. So was that pretty painful?
It was, when it happened, it was probably a 9 out of 10. And at first I just thought my kneecap was dislocated, because my kneecap's like sitting a couple inches higher than it should. So they got me back in the boat and, moved my leg wrong. Boom, pain shoots up to 10, but with my leg out straight, it was like, okay, this is manageable. And I'm trying to like push my kneecap back in,
Oh man.
not going in. And there's like a part of me like, I don't know, am I damaging it? Like, I think the kneecap should just be down here, but it's not going. So 5 hours later, in the world's shittiest emergency room, it's discovered, likely have a torn patella tendon, which is, you can't get your kneecap back in if the tendon
Yep.
is
Not going to work like
torn.
that.
Yeah.
Dude. Man, I'm really sorry. That sucks. Well, maybe we should have done the interview like post surgery when you're all like drugged up.
Yeah, dude, that would be a great interview.
That's good.
And and for having to wait a week and a half for surgery, which, as much as I can complain about systems in the U.S. more than anybody, I'm grateful for aspects of our medical system. I mean, it left in the wild, like I would die from this. I not able to walk. I'd eventually starve, or like some other guy would come along, kill me, and eat my
Yep.
body. So I'm very grateful, yet having to wait a week and a half for the surgery. I am also grateful that the pain is non-existent, unless I move it wrong and I'm in a massive brace. So it's, aside from the inconvenience, I'm grateful to have been pretty comfortable the past week and a half.
Yeah, that's good. And I always say that too when it comes to like allopathic care, emergency and acute care, and surgery situations like this. I would want to be no other place except for the United States,
100%.
honestly.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, well, that's not awesome, but it's awesome you're getting surgery. Segue into my next question. So, I don't really know this because I've been following you for a long, long time. I don't really know about your background though. So, if you could give just as brief as you want a background of who JP Sears is and how you got to this point in your life, that'd be great.
Yeah, man. So, I'd been doing, before I was doing comedy, I'd been doing life coaching for 13 years. And I got into that because fresh out of high school, I went to college for 3 months and just knew that this is not for me. So dropped out, scared to death. I don't know. Am I going to be a ditch digger my whole life? I don't know. But then I quickly got into alternative health studies. It's stuff you don't really find in universities, but much
What
more.
led you to that? Because that's always an interesting one.
So the gym I was working out at, my hometown of Bowling Green, Ohio, the one personal trainer in the gym, her and I would chat once in a while, and she said, JP, you're really intentional with the way you work out. I've been watching these videotapes, VHS tapes,
Nice.
date me a little bit. These VHS tapes of a guy named Paul Chek.
Uh,
Who is that? And she's like, wow, he does this amazing approach to performance exercise and rehabbing people with exercise. So she says, I'm taking his courses now. You might be interested. So I said, well, I don't know what else to do. So I ordered a set of his tapes at the time. That was called Scientific Back Training. And I studied them. And, the first time in my life, I became passionate about learning something. I'd been passionate about sports and having a good time and friends, but in school, it's like, dude, I'm here to entertain myself so I don't die of boredom. So that woke up a passion to learn. So I dove in fully studying with Paul Chek and his Chek Institute, learning all about exercise, nutrition, emotional wellness. And then I taught for Paul Chek for 7 years, teaching his courses. And, along the way, I was shifting, my focus of working with people was going from, in the beginning, exercise and nutrition to like, I'm much more passionate working with people on emotional coaching, helping them empower themselves to, get past their fear blocks, their sabotage patterns, and just pain and trauma they carry. So that's what I had been doing. And then 7.5 years ago, my world kind of changed. I just had these ideas to share empowering concepts through the language of comedy, thinking, well, it's a bad idea. I don't know anybody else that does this, and they'll discredit me as a life coach. But my sense of humor has always been very awake, and like, so I one of the lenses I see life through is through paradoxes, humor, sarcasm, satire, hypocrisy, but like in a fun way. So I said, damn, this is stupid, but I got to make this video. I'll just make one video. And I did that. And the first comedy video I made is called How to Be Ultra Spiritual. And that woke up something inside of me. I would say when I started studying the Czech Institute, that was the first time I became passionate about learning. But when I made my first comedy video, that's when I became passionate about creating for the first time. And then I just started Forrest Gumping my way along. No plan, still don't have a plan, never had a plan of where I'm going, what's the strategy. Like, strategies aren't my love language. So I've just been Forrest Gumping my way along the past 7.5 years in this comedy world of, sharing perspectives and of course the intention to make people laugh, but more importantly, the bigger intention to help people, wake people up to their power, their sovereignty, their own mind, their own heart.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, and I want to get into this, what sort of woke you up to what's going on with COVID, but the use of comedy is so effective because it's like, rather than attacking someone saying, hey, you're a hypocrite, oh, you're a freaking sheep, blah, 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 the use of comedy to make them laugh and be like, oh, like, I haven't really thought of it this way is so effective. Like, I think your videos are some of the most effective videos out there over the course of this last year and a half. So speaking of that, what was your first indication? Like, what made you realize that COVID is not what we're being told?
Yeah. So two things, and, rewind 14 months ago or whatever it was, the first 2 weeks, it's like, dude, I'm as scared as anybody. Like, holy hell. I've always been someone who doesn't watch the news. I've lived without a TV for the past 20 years. So I've always been like, dude, the news is fear mongering. But even I was like, oh shit, this deadly virus, this is horrible. But then I believe it was last April, end of April or so, maybe super early May, research out of USC started coming out saying like, dude, the infection rates of COVID are way higher than we thought they were. But here's the good news about that. Most of those are asymptomatic infections. So what that's showing is the disease is between 22.5 and 45 times less deadly than we thought. The way my mind works is like, dude, that's great news.
Yeah, great news.
This is like the best news you could imagine. And like, cool, like the 2-week lockdown that at this point, now it's been like 6 weeks, is like, guys, like, awesome. But the public policies did not adjust to that. Mm-hmm. That data that came in, the public policies continue to react as though we're finding out that the virus is deadlier than ever. So I definitely like, all right, well, that doesn't make sense. When I'm accidentally thinking for myself, that doesn't make sense.
Accidentally.
And then right at that time, I made a video called What It's Like to Believe Everything the Media Tells You. And then not that video, but the reaction to that video then kind of woke me up the rest of the way, where I looked at that video and like, well, there's nothing controversial about this. But the way I saw people react to it, I mean, the vast majority of the reactions are like, this is great. Thank you for making the video. But then I'd see other reactions where you could see a lot of fear in people, and also the politicalization of it. Yeah. Where I'd see people come out of the woodwork and be like, JP, look, I saw that video. I didn't know you were a Trump supporter. Like, what? Why? Like, first off, if I am, fuck you. Like, I'm allowed to be. Yeah. And two, like I said, nothing about that in the video. And at the time, I wasn't a Trump supporter. The time of the election, I sure as fuck was, because like the alternative was, well, what it's turned out to be.
Yep.
So at that time, I started realizing, oh, COVID is not a medical issue anymore. COVID is a political issue. And that's what it's been all this time. So those were the two alarm clocks I had with the COVID deception that we've been laughing our way through for the past 14 months.
Yeah, dude. It's interesting, the political piece, because if you were to go back and look at any of my tweets, and I hadn't spoken up on anything. I was just a normal dude posting on social media a year ago right now. But if you were to go back 2.5 years ago, I couldn't speak on like specific things, because in the Army you have to abide by the Hatch Act, where you can't speak on left or right leaning politics. But I was very clearly left leaning in my, like, what I was talking about, right? And it was the most odd thing, and I sort of noticed this before COVID with some of the states with their restrictions on vaccines and stuff. I was like, this is really weird. Like, the left-leaning ideology that's supposed to be liberal and like accepting of all is very restrictive. It doesn't make sense, right? And then COVID hits, and I had so many people coming up to me like, "Oh, you're a QAnon far right-wing Trump supporter." I was like, what are you talking about? And like, all the people that I knew, that I interacted with, personally, at least at that point, were all very like left-leaning hippies like myself, right? So what was your, I guess, political ideology, if there was one, prior to COVID, and like how has that transitioned, and where do you stand now?
I didn't really have a political ideology at all. I'd never been interested in politics. If you ask me what's left and right, like what's that kind of mean? What's a Democrat, Republican mean? I'd be like, dude, I don't know. But it's like I would kind of identify with the left. And that's because it's like, oh, dude, like, I like the environment. Environment's cool. So I guess like I'm kind of left. But man, it changed. And then and also like I used to live in Southern California. So like spirituality, self-growth has always been an important part of my life. And a lot of people I know, both personally as well as just like whatever, connected to them online, they're very spiritual people, and they kind of whatever. So most of them are on the left, or at least I thought they were all on the left at the time. So many are not anymore. But one of the things in that community that I realized there wasn't congruence with is, from a spiritual perspective, everybody's saying like, dude, you don't live in fear, live in love. It's like, cool. That's easy to say when there's nothing to be afraid of. We get that. But then not when COVID hit, but after 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and there's plenty of evidence like COVID is not what we thought it was back on March 14th. Then those same people who they've spent a couple decades preaching like, free yourself of fear, live in love, not in fear. Then they attack you when you are living free of fear. And you see how afraid they are. Why would you leave your house? I'm not leaving my house. I'm not hugging you. Like, bro, do you know how much fear you're in? So yeah, and that was part of like the separation of like, I don't know, finding a sense of political footing and realizing, well, that there's plenty of bullshit in that community. Yeah, I don't know. My political stance is freedom, period. And
Yeah,
right
dude.
now,
There's been this like shift of like traditional liberalism versus conservatism to now like, and people from both sides have gone to either. It's now like authoritarianism versus libertarianism, like just like freedom period versus like, we want you to do and say exactly everything that we say, and if not, you're not accepted, but we accept everyone at the same time. It's like, what's the no sense.
Which is gaslighting, man. It's like you're embodying the thing you say you're against while you say that you're doing the opposite of what you're doing. We accept everybody. Well, you sure as shit don't accept anybody who doesn't think exactly like you. And that's a problem for any human or any group of people, not just like on the left right now, that just seems to be a problem. And yeah, and to your point, like I would rephrase that, like we're, one side, and plenty of lunatics on the right, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
Plenty of corruption as well.
Absolutely. I always say the right is fully bought out to like oil companies and chemical companies and big agricultural companies that are absolutely decimating our environment. So it's like, it's not.
Yeah, I think you're right. And with that acknowledged, on the, like, what do we stand for side, one side is communism, but we're not calling it communism yet. But one side is like communism. And just like you said, tell me what to do, tell me what I think, 1984, like, let's usher that in. And then the other side is freedom. It's like, whatever side is for freedom, in 5 years, if somehow the political tides change and the left is for freedom, then cool. Like, wherever freedom is, that's where I'm standing. So yeah, crazy times.
What do you think it is, man? Like, cause I have so many friends that some of them have all stopped talking to me, and some still talk to me that were very, spiritually minded and freedom minded, just like you say, that have now completely cut me off and don't agree with me whatsoever. What is it about our perception, or what is it about their perception that has them so caught in that like dogmatic ideology of blindly outsourcing any critical thought to these authority figures? Like, what do you think is the mechanism behind that, of these people who I previously identified with, just as you did, that were very, like you're talking about, freedom loving? What's going on there?
And I don't know, but if I was pretending to have half a clue, here's my feeble guess. I think it's the relationship one has with discomfort, and whether they're willing to feel discomfort, or if they're unwilling to, which means they're in a relationship with discomfort where they're always avoiding it. So to change your mind, you have to get really fucking uncomfortable. You have to, like, fuck, I was wrong. You have to, like, okay, I was wrong. That's uncomfortable. And a lot of times in human psychology, you think, oh, my thinking was wrong. So then we have a sense of shame, like, I am wrong as a being. And then, like, cool, I was wrong. And now what the fuck do I believe? So now there's the abyss of confusion where you don't have solid footing with what you believe to be true. All you know is what I've been believing isn't true. So you have to be brave in order to change your mind. You have to be willing to experience discomfort in order to change your mind. And those who, like, instead of being brave, just to be blunt, those who would rather live as a pussy, they'll avoid discomfort, even the discomfort that is in their best interest. Like, I'm getting surgery tomorrow. It'll be uncomfortable, but it's in my best interest. If I was just dominated by pussy consciousness, then I'd be like, no, I'm not going to go into discomfort because discomfort's bad. Yeah, and I'd be limping around the rest of my life. Well, a lot of people are limping around psychologically because they treat discomfort as though it's a fucking deadly virus. Yet I think those who have lived with any remote level of bravery realize the greatest blessings and growth in their life comes from being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
So, I just briefly share, back in, when 2016, when Trump got elected, at the time I was like, I don't know, like, Hillary scares me more. So with Trump, but then, like, of course, the propaganda machine would just inundate. Like, again, I don't watch the news, but still the propaganda would reach me. And
well, it reaches the hive mind of society, so it's going to reach you inevitably.
100%. Right? And to be honest, it affected me. I started, like, I was in the narrative of Trump is destroying the environment because he pulled out of the Green New Deal. How dare him? And he's racist. Why? But he says he's racist. They wouldn't say he's racist unless he was racist. And then whatever, a year ago, I start actually thinking for myself and realizing what I have been thinking about Trump, first off, wasn't my own thinking. I'm just using Trump as an example. It wasn't my own thinking. And second off, the thinking I had been harboring in my brain about Trump is not accurate relative to when I am doing my own thinking. So, and that was uncomfortable because I had to process the emotions of like, dude, I'm dumb enough that I allowed myself to get fooled. I'm dumb enough that I allowed myself to get infected by the news propaganda. And I've been preaching against the news for 20 years. So
it's crazy because it's not even about Trump or not Trump. It's just about that we are so affected. I've been saying this so much lately. We are so affected by a reality that's contrived by the black boxes in our home, and then the people who are affected by that affecting us, rather than going with our own observations and our own experience with regards to what we're experiencing with things, right?
100%. And you being a person who's willing to change your mind and evolve, though I don't know that much about you, I know like you're someone who embraces discomfort. You never would have been in the military and made it through if you weren't willing to get uncomfortable. So if I were to put it at just like, why are some people willing to drown in the name of not changing, and why are other people willing to like, oh cool, I was in that group but now like, no, my current compass leads me elsewhere. I think the common denominator is one's relationship with discomfort, whether they have the courage to embrace it or they have the cowardness to always avoid it.
Do you think there's elements of too that like, so to give context, I was abused a lot when I was younger by my own dad, right? And we've since healed that and mended that, and I no longer looked at myself as a victim of my circumstances. There's an element of the quote spiritual community that I think is so stuck in continually pointing all of the wrong, like, oh, they're gaslighting me, they are abusing us. And like, there's elements of truth to that, no question. But the thing that I find frustrating is the avoidance of solutions to that and personal empowerment despite that experience, or because of that experience, like evolving yourself personally. I see so many spiritual minded people, or supposedly spiritual minded people, stuck in this victim consciousness as well. And what are your thoughts on that?
Man, yeah, I agree. I see the same thing. I believe a lot of there's a current trend. The victim archetype has been around for forever, but there's certainly a current trend of people getting their emotional needs and social status by making themselves into a victim while pretending someone else is doing it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's far different than, being a victim is functional for a period of time when trauma, when abuse has happened to you, an assault, trauma has happened to you. Being a victim is functional for a phase of time. It ain't a lifetime set of clothes to put on. But what I believe what happens in our ego, we get a sense of significance when we can always make ourselves the biggest victim. And because we feel significant, that gratifies the ego. We feel powerful because we feel significant. We can always victimize ourselves. But the trick is on us. We feel powerful because we feel significant, but that's the language of the ego. We feel powerful out of grounds that are inherently disempowering us. While we disempower us, we blame someone else for it, but we think we're being empowered. That's why no matter how much someone victimizes themselves, it's never enough. Then they got to go cancel someone else. By the way, anytime someone's trying to cancel someone else, the person trying to cancel them is crusading for their own victimhood. Oh. I'm not talking about someone who's been assaulted and, I'm not talking about trauma happening, or anything like that. I'm talking about someone like, well, what did he say last year? And how's that affect me? And, yes, man. So I made a video really maybe a month ago called How to Become More of a Victim.
Yeah, I watched it. It was so good.
Trying to highlight this because Ram Dass once said, you can't get out of a jail you don't know you're in. So if you've been getting your emotional needs met as a victim, you're a fish swimming in water and you don't know you're swimming in victim water. And you certainly don't know that you're the one manufacturing those waters, because part of the victim is your eyes are pointing out. So who you see, who you're pointing your eyes at, is the one that you've convinced yourself has done to you what you've done to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the emotions that our physiology make us feel, we pretend someone else has domain over our physiology. And to me, that's very disempowering. And I certainly have compassion for it, because we all go through phases of being a victim. At times I will, like, I watch a Bill Gates documentary by James Corbett, amazing. And I'll look at that and I started victimizing myself. Like, this fucking guy, he's like taking over the world. He's unstoppable. And I'm like, damn, I made myself a victim about Bill Gates.
And that's like the important balance, right? It's like, it's the calling out of the dark things that are happening, because there is a lot of shit that is happening. You're like, damn, dude. But not getting stuck in that and finding solutions for it. I've even thought lately that there's a lot of people that I've been interacting with personally that are just constantly almost like finding more things to be upset about with what's going on with the world. And yeah, there is a lot of dark shit going on, but what are you doing to empower yourself to go the other way or create new systems for yourself and your family in spite of that, right?
100%. Yeah, man. I agree. I think we need to be aware of the external, and we need to deal with that. Otherwise, we're just spiritually bypassing. But we also need to be aware of the internal and self-responsibility. I think to be functional, and especially to thrive in our world today, we need the flexibility to do both. And I think we need the bravery to interact with the outside world in a way that upholds our sovereignty while respecting other people. And we need the sensitivity to find our self-responsibility and do what Gandhi said, be the change we wish to see in the world, rather than just screaming for other people to be the change we wish to see in the world.
Yes, censorship. That's what I want to talk about now. So, because you're someone who has experienced quite a bit of censorship, as have I. I've been deleted now off Instagram 3 times, and I have to come back in a disguise with like a mask and a beard and everything.
I love how you're just fucking with the system. That's so beautiful.
That's the only way I can come back. I have to make it funny, right? Otherwise, I spiral.
Not Alec Zeck. That's just like.
Gotta do it, man. It's funny because now I'm out of the army, so I'm actually gonna grow a beard, and then probably So, but anyway, so censorship. Why? It's unbelievable to me that, and it's so unbelievably obvious from the position that we're sitting in, that there are literally doctors begging to be featured on mainstream news. Like, please debate me on the merits of my arguments and what I have to say and the data that I bring to the table and my observations. But instead, all we constantly see is just them being completely deplatformed off of things. A doctor I've become pretty close with, Dr. Tom Cowan, has been taken off of like everything. His book was taken off of Amazon. And then it's framed in the media that, and if you even Google Tom Cowan right now, you'll find conspiracy theorists that says misleading things about 5G. And then a study just came out last week showing that he was actually correct. But what are your thoughts on censorship, and where do you see this going? And what do you see as possible solutions to counteract the censorship that we're experiencing?
Great questions. First the internal, instead of just positioning ourselves as the victim of like fucking big tech, how dare they? Maybe they're evil, but are we victimizing ourselves in relation to evil? So in order to hopefully be empowered, I think it's important for everybody. And I've sat with this because, like yourself, I've been censored. I've sat with what counts the most is, how the fuck have I censored myself all my life? How many times have I not said what I truly feel because I'm afraid of losing approval? And I'll tell you, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, none of them have censored me nearly as much as I have censored me in my life.
Wow.
And that's something I'm working on. And the past year of heavy censorship has been quite a gift, because that's helped me step more into my power of taking off my internal censors and being unapologetic with how I genuinely feel and how I genuinely see something in the moment. So thank you, censorship. You've helped me become more bold and honest with myself and the people around me.
Wow.
Thank you, censorship. And then, interacting with it at an external level, there's, believe it or not, I'm going to get radical. You okay with that, Alec?
Yeah, let's do it, dude.
When Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg testify in front of Congress and the Senate, I don't think they're being completely honest.
Whoa. What makes you think that?
Yeah.
I haven't read that anywhere.
Yeah, well, it's odd. Yeah, conspiracy theorists, by the way. It's just obvious that they're censoring everything that the left wants censored. It's obvious. And like, cool, gas tell us that's not happening, but my reality isn't dictated by gaslighting statements. My reality is dictated by my own eyes. So that's happening. And I think that, to me, there's a couple solutions. I don't know if they're great solutions, and we might just be like going into the apocalypse, but like, cool, let's go there the best way we know how. So a couple solutions I know of is, outwitting them at their own game. Like, for instance, like you having now like another Instagram account, not Alec, Zeck. It is like awesome. You're playing the game. You're infiltrating behind enemy lines, if you will. And by the way, a lot of people would say, like, why would you even want to be on social media? I think if you don't need to be on social media, get the fuck off.
Yeah.
For me, and I know for you, we have, part of our mission is to help awaken people, and you don't awaken people by isolating yourself at home
Further into an echo chamber on like these smaller alternative platforms. Yeah, exactly. Because I've had people on my Telegram channel, and I have a lot of subscribers there, say, just get off Instagram. I'm like, no, I will keep coming back and keep popping my head up and keep on putting my message out there as long as I can. I will do that forever. There's
a good friend of mine. Do you know who Tim Kennedy is?
Yeah.
So Green Beret, just badass, like G.I. Joe times 10. He's been in some of the worst places, dealing with the worst people on earth. And someone could say, Tim, why the fuck would you be in Rwanda? Get out of there. It's like, well, no, that's a warrior. A warrior is willing to go where his duty calls.
Mm-hmm.
So not like Instagram.
Yeah, that's how I was like, shit, like Instagram, Rwanda, like, yeah. Oh my God.
Horrible analogy.
I get what you mean.
So, but that's where the people are that we want to reach. So I think still being on the platforms is part of my mission, part of yours. And if that's not part of someone's missions, get the hell off social media. You'll be better off. But of course, like for me, I need to say what I need to say oftentimes without saying the thing literally,
Mhm.
because like I can't mention vaccines, but I just made a video called Fitness Passports. Never mentioned vaccines or vaccine passports once, but the censorship has forced me, hopefully, to be a better creator and comedian, to be more artistic and symbolic and connective with people where I know what they already know, so I can access that without having to pre-frame the video with that information, because I'm connected to the people, so I know what's already in their mind. I just provoke what's already there and get them to say what I can't say.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's part of it. And then I think it's also super important to support the alternative platforms that, luckily they're not becoming so alternative anymore. They're growing because there's such a demand. Like, contrary to what the media tries to get everybody to think, like, hey, the world's celebrating censorship, we're all better off. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Most people see it as a horrible infringement on First Amendment. So the alternative platforms like Telegram, Parler, MeWe, and I know there's many others beyond what I'm even aware of, but I think it's important to be on those.
Mhm.
And they can be echo chambers, and they can also be important ways to reach people and um,
There's
survive.
also aspects of it that you're validating the experience of those that see it the way you do too, because
Yeah,
I mean, people have people around them constantly that are just like really gaslighting them and themselves with what's going on. So like validating other people who are quote awake to what's happening is just another important element of it too.
indeed. And actually, on that note, I was just having a conversation with a friend yesterday about like how anymore, most of the time, if I'm walking into a store, I won't wear a mask. And it's like, cool, if they need to tell me I have to have one, then I'll make a decision to either put it on, or I'll let them know, hey, I'm taking my business elsewhere because of this reason. But there's two important reasons why I do that now. One is like, I enjoy the increased liberty I give myself by not wearing a symbol of fear that my sovereignty doesn't feel is in my best interest. But more importantly than that is, and maybe you've had this experience, but you walking in there without a mask, there might be other people, a few, but also most probably wearing a mask. But seeing the people wearing a mask, once in a while you get like ooh, you're spreading disease. But more often than not, I'll see looks of someone just gave themselves permission to take their mask off. So that validating something that was inside of them that needed more validation, whether it's on social media or out in the open world, that's important.
It
I
is. It is so important and so cool. I've had that experience several times lately where I wasn't wearing a mask. And actually, I was just in Chipotle the other day, walked in not wearing one. Dude behind me happened to walk in not wearing one too. Dude in front of us did like a double take and took his mask off. And I was like,
That's
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if he genuinely wants to wear his mask, great. But he didn't. Thus,
Mhm.
he saw the symbol of permission from these people exuding what I hate to say it, but now it takes bravery to have a naked face.
Mhm.
Uh, and that gave him permission to join the facial nudist colony, which is awesome.
If I had told you that would be the thing 4 years ago, would like in 2021, we'd be dealing with this, you'd be like, what the fuck? Are you a conspiracy theorist?
Exactly. And
But I want to transition to one more thing. So, the how do you come up with the ideas for your videos? I've been thinking about that a lot. 'Cause I'm like, dude, this dude is just unbelievable at getting into the hypocrisy and then the narrative that doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Where do you get the ideas for most of your videos?
yeah, I appreciate you asking. the creative muse works in mysterious ways. So I don't know where the ideas come from, but I can tell you how they show up usually is just kind of like a flash, um, like a video on how to make yourself more of a victim. So it'll just pop into my mind like the headline of the idea, like the title of the video, and I'm sure a lot of that is like how to become more of a victim. Cool. That was a year in the making of observing people victimizing themselves. A video I released last week called "How to Worship Fear." Cool. That idea dropped in a millisecond, but I'm sure feeding into that was the past year watching people, proselytize and praise fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, with comedy, any creation, what you're observing every day, I think both consciously and subconsciously, kind of that's tree sap coursing through the tree and goes into the trunk, and then eventually gets expressed through the leaves of creation. So I think it all feeds in. And then once in a while there's like one specific thing, like I'll see a news headline about some kind of corruption, or the news line isn't showing the corruption, but like I know there's corruption behind it. It's like, cool, that
There it is. It just kind of like comes to you most of the time, right? Like just
yeah, absolutely. Or there's like sometimes it's just more blunt and not so airy fairy, where it's like, cool, like the Second Amendment rights have been, Biden's obviously like, cool, like we definitely want to disarm a society because they have communism unless you do that. So the Second Amendment rights, they've been trying to take them, they were pretty hot and heavy a month ago. So I'm like, man, you look at history, bad shit happens when you disarm a society. So awesome. I want to share my perspective about that. I want to share, in a satirical way, why taking away guns deserves to be scrutinized.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, even on that point, like 3 years ago, I was pretty against, having been in the military and having used an M4, I was like, yeah, no person needs to own one of these. Like, why would they need to? And now I have 2 AR-15s. So it's like,
it's pretty interesting. Like, first off, like I think one of my understandings of the Second Amendment is realizing people need guns because people with guns will want to take your guns.
mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why gun rights exist. And then, of course, there's hunting. And then, of course, if shit hits the fan and you extrapolate, you have about 3 days before good people will be acting like savages.
Mm-hmm.
You look in the neighborhood, look across the street, and there's a loving father of 3. Cool. 3 days of hunger and no water. That dad, out of the love and care for his children, would be willing to break into my house and take me out to take what I have. So I need to shoot my neighbor is why I need to have a gun. We've realized we've been living in such a fragile society, and like, is Klaus Schwab planning a cyber attack? Is what the fuck is Bill Gates planning to block out the sun? So I think the whole COVID propaganda has really taught us self-responsibility is what's most important, and self-protection for ourselves, our family, is
self-reliance and decentralization. Just getting, like instead of continually resisting the system that is and petitioning it to change, just fucking take yourself and the people you love and people who have open ears to hear what you have to say and go form new and better systems.
Yeah.
That's
Amen.
it. That's it. That's Amen. The quote. Okay. So I know you just had a child recently, and I myself, I have a 3.5-year-old and a 2-month-old. So
Oh, 2 months. Wow.
yeah, I have a 2-month-old, and then I have a 3.5-year-old boy. And I know even prior to having my kids, I was, I guess, waking up to everything going on. But once I had my kids, my view of the world and just my love for life itself, just so much of me changed when I had a
Yeah.
kid. What was that experience like for you, and how do you view parenting with everything going on in the world in 2021?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just everything you said is my experience. It having my son Wilder 5 months ago, it's changed me for the better. It's made me more of who I was meant to be. It's given me way more courage to be my whole self. It's given me way more courage to be brave, because now guess what? It ain't just about me. It's
Mm-hmm.
about something greater than me. I've always been into helping people, and I always will be, but specifically it's more than just about me with this little guy. And it's almost like I always have a sense like, and I'm crusading for his kids too. So, and then I think in that I have like perspective shifts. Like if you would have talked to me 2 years ago and said, JP, what if your millions of followers online, your channels, your livelihood, your ability to do stand-up comedy, what if I took all that away? I'd be like, fuck, I think my world would end. My perspective has changed. Now I'm so willing to risk losing everything, because if I don't do that, I have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because like you took away all my shit now, I'd be like, I'll be stressed. I'll be a little stressed and I won't like it, but it doesn't matter. I've got my
Mm-hmm.
guy. I've got my family. I would way rather pick up cans on the side of the highway to feed my family than not be bold, not be courageous, not serve the mission that I'm looking to serve. So, man, and then I'll tell you, it's made me, having my son, and I realized, man, there's this precious miracle who I love with all my heart. There are so many of these that need help. There's, whether it's child trafficking or, just injecting experimental shit into 2-month-olds. It's made me realize like how precious life is, because you look at a grown man like you or I, like, yeah, rough and tumble guy, like whatever, like, but man, there's a preciousness and innocence that needs to be protected. And
Mm-hmm.
it takes warriors, it takes courageous people to protect the preciousness and the innocence until it grows and evolves enough to be self-sufficient. So yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is it's made me care about people a hell of a lot more. And it's made me completely unwilling to abide by any bullshit that feels as though it's in my or anybody's disinterest, especially bullshit that's packaged as this is for your own good, but
See a
it's
lot of that
against
lately.
our own good. It's like, man, that's evil times two, motherfucker.
We see so much of that lately. It's I mean, so many things are packaged up as being for our own good or for the greater good. It's unbelievable. All right, I have two more questions. These are my last two that I ask all my guests, and I'm really excited to hear your answers on these. So, what is the purpose of life? Like, why are we all here in your mind?
This is a great question. I think it's to sound a little artsy fartsy, but I think it's to have the blessed experience of remembering who we are, and yeah, remembering who we really are, and remembering and reconnecting with where we come from. And yeah, I think I look at us at all as droplets from the one ocean body of God.
This shirt.
And absolutely. So, at times in my life, I'd thought like, man, it's such a fucking curse. Like, man, like it'd be great to just all be oneness but now I realize, man, no, the forgetfulness is such a precious gift, especially when we remember that we've forgotten. When we're just in a forgetful phase, that can be hell on earth. But when we've reached a point, what waking up means to me is we remember that we've forgotten. Doesn't mean we remember everything. It just means we remember we've forgotten. So now we're on a conscious journey.
Oh, dude.
And to me, that's what life's about.
That was awesome. That was probably the best answer I've heard so far. That was so cool.
Well, right on, brother.
I'm going to use that, but I'm not going to quote you either.
Please, yes. Put Bill Gates' name under that.
Okay, I'm sure he'd say something like that. Who knows? Okay. So this one is a hypothetical situation that would not ever happen today. But if you had 2 to 5 minutes to share an unfiltered, unedited message that was to be shared on all mainstream news platforms with the world, what would you say?
Man, that's a big one. Trust yourself. The siren song tempting you to crash into the rocks comes in the form of people who are enticing you to outsource your truth to them. And that always leads you to crash into the rocks in one way or another. So trust yourself. Sometimes your trust within will align with what someone external to you is saying. Great. Other times it doesn't. So trust yourself and have the courage to let your actions and your decisions emanate from your trust of your inner truth, not your outsourced truth. So yeah, then I'd probably say, don't vote for Biden again, please.
So basically what you're saying is just turn off the fucking TV, stop watching what you're watching right now, and trust your own observations, your own experience, and let that guide you.
Absolutely. I have to highlight what the part you added to it. Turn off the TV and smash it, because you'll turn it back on if you just turn it back off. But smash it. Like, man, freedom. How can you imagine how much freedom the world would automatically have if they stopped voluntarily sitting in front of this fucking thing that is just a propaganda machine?
Dude, all this would be over if we did that for a week. Like if everyone just somehow, hypothetical scenario, stopped watching for a week and even stopped reading the shit that comes across on like the news app on your iPhone or whatever, just stop for a week. Yeah. This would all be over. Because everyone would realize, like, wow, life is actually pretty beautiful and it's not that bad.
Yeah. Amen.
Dude, thank you for joining me, JP. Much love to you, brother. I really appreciate everything that you're doing. So thank you.
Hell yeah, Alec. Thank you for having me, and thank you for continuing to be who you are and uplifting people and awakening people the way that you are. And obviously you lead with bravery, the fact that you're willing to like have your life taken on social media, but you've got many lives. I think it's super cool. I think your willingness to risk it all in the name of greater good is something that inspires me and inspires a lot of other people.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Much love to you.